I learned something interesting about Thomas Paine. Before the American Revolution, Thomas Paine basically single-handedly popularized the idea of independence from England by writing the pamphlet Common Sense and, influencing not just thousands of normal people, but the people who became the founding fathers like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, so that it became more than just, we're disgruntled with the king, we need to fix our tax situation with the king, we need to reconcile these differences with the king. It was like, well, wait a minute, why don't we just say fuck him? We don't need a king. Because as difficult as that may seem to us now, no one had ever really done that in history before, right? So the idea that he could convince the majority of the American colonists and the most influential politicians at the time that, we don't need a king. We can form our own government and do things the way we want, right? It's kind of amazing, right? And you'd expect almost that people would ridicule the idea or hate the idea, have a violent reaction against the idea because they so strongly believe in this concept of divine right of rulers, of kings. We have to have a king. It's ordained by God. It's the way we've always done things. If you tried to do something like that here in Armenia, people would think you're crazy because they're so embedded in their ancient history and tradition. They don't do well with change, especially radical revolutionary changes in the way you do things. So that's kind of a miracle that he was able to do that. And he's almost single-handedly the reason that America exists with the ideology of freedom that it has. And so he was like a celebrity as a result of that, not just in America, but internationally. But I learned that later on in his life, because after his initial success, he wanted to keep writing revolutionary things and inspiring social change. And he got a little cocky, we should say, a little too full of himself, because he already did this one amazing, unprecedented thing, right? And he tried to do the same thing in France, but I guess it wasn't as successful. But later, he wrote The Age of Reason, which was about criticizing organized religion instead of kingship, right? So first he criticized political authority, essentially. That was the purpose of Common Sense, and saying you don't need a king, you don't need political rulers in the way we're used to thinking of them. And then much later in his life, he wrote The Age of Reason, criticizing the concept of organized religion, essentially saying the same thing about churches that he said about kings. And everyone hated him for that. The same people who loved him and praised him and said, what a revolutionary man, this amazing idea that's instigated this revolution in this whole new country that we all now enjoy living in. As soon as he criticized their religious doctrines, their churches and their saints and their pastors and so forth, that's when they said, well, fuck you, man. How dare you criticize the way we do things? Exactly what you would expect, from somebody suggesting too much change too quickly. And of course, nowadays, that's a normal conversation for people to have. Not that everyone has to be atheist or secular or whatever, but for us to sit down and say organized religion's pretty fucked up, isn't it? Right? And we can sit and, even if you are religious, you can sit and criticize either your own religion or other people's religions or ways that the people running the religion do things. But still back then, that was one sacred cow too far to slaughter. If you know the expression, slaughtering sacred cows. Mm-hmm. In India, cows are considered sacred. You're not allowed to kill them. Yeah. So a sacred cow is some belief or practice you have that you refuse to question. Yeah. Because it's too important to you. So Armenia is the land of sacred cows, right? Over the most ridiculous things sometimes, right? And so it's just interesting that the same man who was successfully able to slaughter one major sacred cow, the idea that you need a king controlling your life and telling you what to do, right? He successfully killed that idea. Amazing. But he couldn't go one step further and say, maybe you don't need organized religion telling you what to do also. People weren't ready for that idea. So the same man that everyone loved when he was younger hated him at the time that he died.
Even in the US?
Yeah. According to what I read, at least. I'll look more into it. But there's a lesson somewhere in there that people can only handle so much revolution at a time. Revolutions have to happen when people are ready for them. Major changes in the way people think and do things. Because nowadays that wouldn't even be controversial. It'd be obviously, of course organized religion is fucked up, right? Even if you believe in God or whatever your particular religion is, you can very easily find major flaws in most organized religions, right? But back then it was how dare you?
But his target in that time was Christianity probably.
Yeah.
Not, for example, Judaism.
I'm reading The Age of Reason now. I'll have more detailed thoughts later, but I just thought that the public reaction to him, the fact that it could change so quickly from positive to negative like that because he criticized the wrong thing suddenly, was very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Of course, the same thing happens nowadays with cancel culture. It shows you something about how meaningful or superficial the common people's adoration is if they can so quickly go from loving to hating you because you said the wrong thing.
It was nice. For me, everything in my head is sexy.
Sexy or sexist?
Sexy. This one is
Everything is sexy. Okay.
Yeah. In Iran, I had some girlfriend that I could kiss them, but it was not like few time, not the first thing. But it was not. It doesn't mean that I can touch the body. After a few kisses, when I touch their body, they are probably Muslim girls. They were like, "What? What?" I was like, aren't we girlfriend and boyfriend? Like, you can kiss me here, but it's take a lot, maybe a year after that you can touch my body.
Okay.
And this was also for me, not just in a sexy way, it was like they need time because a lot of, I don't want to call it, a lot of things in their head that they want to cross one by one, like, okay, maybe I can have a boyfriend. But my boyfriend can just kiss me and not touch me. Or maybe in the future, but not in one day or not in a 1 month or something like this. So it's for me like the same that you said, like, okay, no king, but cheers is like...
Oh yeah, we need our reverend, our pastor, our saint, or whoever our religious leader is, right?
If my kiss is okay, but my boobs,
yeah,
be careful.
Yeah, it's just, it's interesting that even people who come from a very repressive culture can consider themselves very open-minded, very free, and maybe they are in some particular ways, like a compartmentalized kind of freedom. Like I'm free only along this particular road that I've allowed myself to explore, but everything else I'm still very, very sheltered. Mm-hmm. And like the women I've attempted to date, and even the one I attempted to marry in this culture was kind of a similar thing. It's like, first of all, why would you even be with someone like me unless you were seeking freedom? Because that's like all that I'm all about, right? An Armenian, growing up in traditional Armenian culture, would not seek the crazy open-minded American unless that's what they want in their life, right? And that's what they thought they wanted, but they were only so comfortable with it. The rest, they still had to stay contained in their little cage, right? Similar with sex. It's like, okay, we're getting along well. We're very attracted to each other physically, emotionally, whatever. We're kissing. And then it's like, okay, obviously we're going to have sex, right? What? Why would we do that? Well, because we're in a relationship and you're very attracted to me and I'm very attracted to you and we both enjoy it. And that's what adult human beings typically do if they have healthy sex drives. What? No, like that's crazy. Like, obviously, no, we have to respect the traditional way that people have sex in Armenia. It's not even a religious concept. It's just, this is how Armenians have sex. It's not like God demanded we do it this way. For some it is, but it's just, this is how Armenians are trained to think about sex. And we can't possibly question that, even if very clearly we would be interested in doing it a different way.
Exactly. Exactly. The same problem in a person, you can see it in a society as a problem. So the girls that I met them and we had date and it was clear that now they want to have sex for them, which they coming from Muslim family, but they are not anymore Muslim, they are atheists, but they were like, we have sex, everything, but not from vagina because I'm a virgin. So anal is okay. Every kind of
anal, not Anna. Anna is my cat. Anal. Yes, my volunteers have also been Anna.
Anal is okay. A lot of things is okay except the normal one, except the natural one. because you know this is my church, and if you want to come to the church, you should sign the marriage. Otherwise, the virginity.
Yes.
And I was
Because no man will want them if the hymen is not intact.
exactly. I was like, oh my God, are you still virgin? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's weird because you get this, it's like you're living in two different time periods simultaneously. In one way, they're like ultra modern and like open and liberal and progressive. And then the other ways, they're still living like it's a few hundred years ago.
Exactly.
Like in the Middle Ages, where they still have very strict traditional ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think now you said that, can I ask you, like, still in the US, I don't care about the European, the church is like something that you cannot touch.
Okay, so there's a lot of variety in America.
I think it's
In California,
50 years.
well, so like in California, it's sort of like people like going to church on Sundays, but they're not really particularly religious most of the time. And in some other parts of the country, like in Utah, there are some really diehard Mormons with really fundamental traditional beliefs. So it depends where you go in the country. But like, I don't think I ever knew a single person in California who gave a shit about the condition of a woman's hymen. Like, I don't think that was ever a conversation that happened in California, right? Like, we know women have hymens, you know,
hymen?
the part that breaks when a woman has sex the first time.
Oh.
The blood. And we, you know, even in sexual education, we learn like hymens can break from riding a horse or something, or doing sports. Like, it's not even like a reliable indicator of virginity. And also, who gives a shit, right? Like, why would this be something you care about? And then you move to Armenia, or another very fundamentalist traditional country. It's like such a big deal that the hymen has to be intact. There has to be blood stains on the sheet on the wedding night. And it almost seems like a joke or something, because it's like, as you thought growing up in California, you're like, haven't we moved past this as a species? Like, you learn about this as like something that people cared about hundreds of years ago for some reason that you don't really understand. And here it's like, no, men need a woman with a hymen. Why? What does that do for you? What does that mean to you? Like, it's just a symbol of purity or something? Like, you can't stand the idea that another dick has been in there before yours, or because they have sex with prostitutes or other women if they get the chance. So it's not like they're opposed to all sex in principle. They just don't want their wife to have had sex before them. So it's a very strange double standard. And
For me, it's like they don't want to second-hand iPhone 15. I want to just do my...
it's just a vanity thing. Yeah, it's like, I want the brand new car. No one else has driven it before me.
Most is the same. Like, all
Right.
is iPhone 15, for example. But they are like, no, I watch not second-hand. It's touched by a person before I own. And, but... Nice. So, you are saying that still after... Okay, California is really exception in the US, even like everybody going to...
Well, the West Coast in general is probably the most hippie, liberal, open-minded part of the country.
Like near the ocean is like quite everything.
Oregon, Washington.
Yeah, probably Tea Party happened also near the ocean.
Yeah, but not the West Coast. We weren't there yet. It was still on the East Coast back then.
Well, still, it's something that you cannot touch. Like, even if today we had Thomas Paine...
Well, there are still religious people in America of varying degrees of fundamentalism. There are some very, like, strictly religious people. I tried to date a Catholic girl in America about 10 years ago. That didn't go well. Even though I told her, like, yeah, I don't care if you have a religion. That's fine. You know, I'm not going to get in the way of you having that. I just want to be with you. But she couldn't get over that. No, my husband has to be Catholic and has to live a Catholic life and do everything Catholic. And what my family think if I marry a non-Catholic. Very similar to the situation with the Armenian girl here. It was, no, my parents have to approve it and you have to do everything the way Armenians do it. And, you know, and, but certainly it wouldn't be seen as strange for people to have conversations criticizing organized religion, or even like being skeptical of the existence of God, whatever version of God you're talking about. Like it, even if you don't like that, like even if you're very religious and that annoys you that atheists exist or people are critical of your religion, it's like you accept that that's that's part of America. Freedom of speech, freedom of inquiry. Like, it's just like, yeah, that's how some people think. It's fine. Like, you know, and it wouldn't be like, oh my God, he said something criticizing religion. Scandalous, you know?
Yeah. But when you were talking about 250 years ago.
Yeah. So he was too far ahead of his time. And I'm guessing it's very interesting trying to infer the mentality and the personality and mindset of historical figures just based on what they wrote or what was written about them, you know, because cultural differences are obviously enormous between now and 250 years ago. But I can imagine that someone like Thomas Paine got very full of himself, very cocky because of his early success in having his writing actually make a difference. So he thought, now I can write anything and change people's minds about anything and enlighten them and teach them. And some of it worked and some of it had the exact opposite effect. So it's something I'm trying to think about now as a writer too. Like I write some controversial things, not that I think I'm going to start an American Revolution or something necessarily. I'd love to, but it's a little outside my control. But like there are some people who really, really hate my writing, some people who really, really love my writing, but I'm wondering, are there things I will write that even the people who love the things I've already written will hate because it goes too far or it attacks the particular thing they were not ready to have attacked? This paragraph. Soon after I had published the pamphlet Common Sense in America, I saw the exceeding probability that a revolution in the system of government would be followed by a revolution in the system of religion. That's exactly what I said. Like, he thought after he revolutionized the idea of government and convinced people they didn't need a king anymore, he got full of himself and thought, maybe I can convince people they don't need church anymore. That's totally fucking right. Yeah, so this is the Age of Reason, which I guess it's one of the last things he wrote, or the very last thing he wrote at the end of his life, criticizing organized religion in Europe and the Americas in 1794. And this is what it made everyone hate him after they previously loved him for inspiring the American Revolution and independence. And even in the very beginning of this, in the opening paragraphs, you can tell he's being as gentle and cautious as possible while approaching this subject. He's saying, like, I know some motherfuckers are going to hate that I'm talking about this. Like, he's well aware, like, maybe people aren't ready for this yet, and that's why I waited to the end of my life to write about this, but I feel like I need to write about this. So it's like he was quite aware that, like, this might undo all the goodwill that he'd earned by writing Common Sense and inspiring the American Revolution and all that. It has been my intention for several years past to publish my thoughts upon religion. I am well aware of the difficulties that attend the subject, and from that consideration had reserved it to a more advanced period of life. Basically, he said, I waited until I was an old man to write this, because I know people aren't going to get what I'm trying to say. I intended it to be the last offering I should make to my fellow citizens of all nations, and that at a time when the purity of the motive that induced me to it could not admit of a question, even by those who might disapprove the work. He's saying that if I wait until the end of my life, and you know what kind of man I am, because you know what I've written all throughout my career, you will trust that I have good intentions for writing this, because you know who I am and what I've written before, and you're not going to think I'm just angrily attacking religion for no good reason, or I'm a spawn of the devil or something, which of course I'm sure many people did. Yeah, so I'm only a few paragraphs in, but already it's very clear. I believe in one God and no more. I hope for happiness beyond this life. I believe in the equality of man, and I believe that religious duties consist in doing justice, loving mercy, and endeavoring to make our fellow creatures happy. Right, so I'm going to finish reading it, but it's clear he's not even attacking, like, believing in God as a concept. He's clearly just attacking the human institutions at the time that had imposed a certain order of spiritual belief and certain duties and responsibilities, and that was enough to earn him disfavor among all the people who previously liked him, because he killed one sacred cow too many. That's a good idiom. I'm going to start saying that. One sacred cow too many.